Thank you. Just in terms of introduction, if you've been listening carefully for the past 2 days, underlying a lot of the techniques to drive data-driven marketing effectiveness is this idea of messaging to the right consumer or customer with the right message at the right time at the right place. Clearly, one of the ways you can go about doing that is using the concept of a customer journey or a consumer journey. So we're going to dive into what does effective targeting mean in this area of messaging to the right customer or the right consumer. The 4 speakers have already been introduced, and in the interest of time, I'm just going to touch upon the 4 topics that they're going to talk about. So first up will be Emma, and she's going to push our thinking on consumer or customer journey. She's going to ask for us to make some improvements and share her experience in this space. Next will be Andy, and he's going to talk a little bit about the intersection of customer and consumer journeys and the mobile environment. Hema from AXA Global Direct will share her experience of how she has been combining first-party and third-party data to drive better targeting. And Jacob is going to share some secrets with us. He's going to tell us what does it take to win in this space. So with that, I'm going to ask Emma to come over. Or you can use the mic, whatever you want. Oh, the click. That's right.
Hi there, thanks for that introduction. Is it working? Hi, thanks for that introduction. I'm Emma Mee. I'm Head of Evidence, which is an insight and analytics hub at Manning Gottlieb OMD, which is a UK media agency. And I'm going to share with you my point of view on how we need to evolve our understanding and the way we view consumer journeys to enable a greater breadth of use to allow for effective targeting. Now, my belief is that customer journeys are going to become even more important moving forwards. And this is for 2 reasons. First of all, it's becoming increasingly difficult for advertising to have an impact with consumers. Ad blocking, clutter, people's busy lives all getting in the way. So if we can understand journeys much better, then we can work out how to have a greater impact with consumers and unlock greater strategic direction and planning. The second reason is that actually the data we have available to build journeys is growing. So we can focus in on a specific part of the journey as it's actually happening to enable more effective targeting for shorter term gain. So I'm going to talk generally about consumer journeys and then share a couple of case studies with you of some of the work we've been doing. First of all, I think there's universal agreement that consumer journeys aren't linear. Not everybody follows the same path. People move from A to B, but they move in different directions. There's lots of multi-directional movements, so people will move around between the different stages of the journey, and they can come in and out of market at any time. And we understand all of this, but yet we still talk about journeys in a linear way and visualize them in a linear way. So I'm trying to change this at our agency, and I'm actually banning visualizing the journey from a linear perspective, and I would ask each of you to try and do the same. The challenge we need to take on instead is to build a much deeper understanding of journeys using multiple data sources to build a continually evolving picture that we can create hypotheses to test and learn against. So the way that we can get into this is through what I call the effective triangle, which has claimed and actual data at the core of this. Claimed data is so important from a research perspective as this gives us insight into consumers' needs, motivations and triggers along the pathway. And it's critical that we understand this so that we know how to have an emotional connection with consumers along the path. Actual data, which is mainly in our interview from digital data, is also critically important as this allows us to have the opportunity to understand rigorous detail as what's happening at specific parts of the journey and to be able to effectively target within this. So through exploring both of these different sets of data, we can then start to think about how we can predict how and where advertising can have a greatest impact along the consumer journey. And this can be used both strategically and at an implementational level. So change is needed. I want us all to change how we build consumer journeys. It's going to be tougher, it's going to take longer, but use more data sources. And we need to change how we visualize the journeys as well. So let's not visualize them in a linear way anymore. So I'm going to share with you now the first of my case studies, which is for one of our music clients in the agency. And the reason for sharing this is because the music industry is quite interesting, and consumer journeys aren't often talked about in this way. Our challenge from the client was to deliver more effective media campaigns that really resonated with a core target audience. And what was happening is the music industry is becoming more and more complex, so we identified that we needed to understand the consumer journey better. So we built one based on proprietary research, based on sales data, social data, Spotify streaming data. And what we identified was actually the triggers to get people into market and then consume was so important and the most important part of the journey. And there were 4 key triggers that we identified. They were the artist, so music and non-music moments, how people discovering music based on their moods and mindset, also fans and advocacy, and then looking onto music consumption, so how people were already listening to music and then listening to, and buying more music off the back of that. So these were really important, excuse me. Talking quickly. These were really important areas for us. And we chose to visualize the journey off the back of this and anchor it in these trigger moments. And this was really important because this unlocked a different approach to planning for us. So we changed how we phase our activity. We changed the channels we were using, so we evolved to using much more digital channels. And we also changed our phasing across day of week and time of day. And we opened up much more interesting conversations with our clients, and we delivered much more impactful planning off the back of this. So that's how we've used consumer journeys at a strategic level. Now, there's obviously a lot more data that sits behind this. I'm happy to talk about that in one of the breaks, but that just shows you how we started to visualize it slightly differently. The second case study I want to share with you is completely different. This is for a finance client, and is based on us focusing on a specific part of the journey, the active journey. So coming back to the effective triangle I talked about, this is focusing on actual data to then predict what journeys are going to take place. Our challenge here was to improve digital effectiveness in the short term. So we needed to evolve our knowledge around consumers, which we had quite a lot of through the DMP. We knew a lot about pathways through our attribution, but we needed to evolve this further. So we focused on the retargeting strand of our programmatic activity to learn more about journeys that had happened. And we built a conversion propensity model to predict how likely or unlikely a consumer was to convert. So what we did is we used ad server cookie level data to score the potential of a cookie to convert based on cookies that had already converted. So we built and ran machine learning to score and allocate a score to each cookie based on its propensity to start an application. When we got these scores, what we then did was to upload all of these cookies into our DSP to then activate different targeting strategies. And this was really successful for us. We saw a 50% improvement in campaign performance and enabled us to overly enhance our campaign effectiveness. Sorry, I'm conscious of the time here. So that's 2 very different case studies of how we're starting to talk about and use consumer journeys. And I'll leave you with some of my summary thoughts there. Thank you.